This is a follow-up from my last video of my first time in jail when I was 15. And following up from that one, I got out on the 12th of October, 95. And as I said in the last one, I got out, arranged to go back to school, do my exams and all that kind of stuff with social services. So I was waiting to get back on the school register. And I was out for about 6 weeks. I mean, I got out of all the intentions, but the first part was when I was 15, so I was still at school, and a mate who was a year above me turned up at my house on a GSXR 1100, which I think was the fastest road bike in the world at the time. I'm not sure. And it's one of those things where you look back and you think, what the hell was I doing? So I've jumped on the back of it and we've gone to his parents' evening. We've gone down there to impress all the girls and stuff like that. And I'm riding on the back of it with no helmet, doing something like 120 down an estate's normal road. But anyway, we ended up getting a car chase and a stolen Vauxhall Astra, and this is the actual footage. This is Devonshire Street in Levenshulme in Manchester. So 6 of us are in this car. I'm in the back, and this was November 95. We all got bail. I think Cunny, who was the driver, was remanded. I'm not sure, but about a week or two later, I was arrested for breaching my curfew. This was at the end of November, and I was remanded to Hindley at the time, and Cunny was there, so I think as the driver he might have been remanded, but we all got bail, but I was the only one when we came to be sentenced, just me and the driver. So I did about a month in Hindley at the time, and Hindley was different because they didn't separate juveniles back then, so I was 15 there, and I couldn't buy tobacco or anything like that. I couldn't even you could have it sent in back then, but I wasn't even allowed to have it sent in. So I've gone in there thinking I cannot let anything like what happened to me on my last sentence. It's not going to happen. You know, I'm there with mates, and I did my first Christmas there in prison, and it was horrible when you're 15 doing Christmas, and there was nothing there. I didn't even have a radio or anything back then. I did it in this cell on D-Wing 222 was a cell, and I carved my name on the door actually with Xmas 95, and for years later people was telling me that like it was still there. So no idea if it's still, even when it was painted over, you could still see it from the reflection. So on the 2nd of January 96, we all went to the youth court to be sentenced. I was given 6 months and Cunny was given 12 months because he was a driver. But all the others who were in the car, there was 3 lads, and we're all 15 years old. All of us were 15 at the time. Cunny was now just turned 16 when he got sentenced. But they all had other charges, so they got adjourned for 3 weeks. So I've gone straight to Werrington House back then, but I was going back to jail. I think things are going to be different this time. You know, thinking I'm the big man and stuff because I've got a codeine. There's about 5 people from my area there, mostly older lads, and some from my estate and some from like neighbouring areas and stuff like that. So I thought I cannot let them see me get humiliated and picked on and bullied and, you know, victimised and stuff like that. I thought anyone says in the toilets, I'm going in the toilets. I don't care if I lose. You gain more credibility if you give it a go rather than being a shitbag and saying, I've kind of learned all this by now. And it was different as well because unlike my last one, I was put in education and you're in a class, all 15-year-olds are in one class together. So I remember being in a class with a guy called Otis Hunter, who I would get to know very well over the years, become like a real good lad. There was a guy called Paul Stanhope, who he was mates with me Cody, but we didn't really like each other, but we kind of just got on for the sake of mutual friends. And there was a guy called Brooks there, mixed race guy from Oldham, and a guy from Leicester called Tony Janigal, who I never saw again, but he's always, for some reason, just stuck in my brain. He was a really small guy, but very muscular. But the thing is, we were at an house back then, everything was prison issue. Your clothes, your shoes, everything, your socks, your underpants, everything was prison issue. You weren't allowed any one bit of your clothing. So there was that hierarchy develops with all prison clothing. So like the darker your jeans were, the more top of the hierarchy. And if you got given like light stonewashed blue jeans, that was like deemed some insult. If you went to the like CES it was called, clothes store, and if you went there on a kit change, it was just an insult. A blue tracksuit was an insult. So one of the things that changed at this time, we didn't start you off in the SEG as induction. We usually started you off in J5 and 6 dorms. And what the regime was, you get up in the morning in dorm, you go down to like a massive long row of tiny sinks where you'd have to brush your teeth and get a wash and stuff like that called the ablutions. And then something like 9, 8, half 8, something like you go down for your breakfast, you get your breakfast, then you go to labour and you come back to the dining room, go back to work at 2 o'clock, come back, have your tea. Then you'd have to go up, you'd wear jeans and jumper all day and he's up to classic shit flicker, tobacco tin shoes, whatever. But then you'd go up to a dorm at about 6 o'clock and you'd have to get changed in your tracksuit. Weekend, you'd have to put your tracksuit on. Then you come back down to the dorm. You go back up to the dorm at about 8 o'clock. And then at 10 o'clock, they'd put Sky Movies on, whatever the 10 o'clock movie was for the day. So I mentioned in my first video where I had a fight, and then I had another fight with a traveller called Charlie Boy Corley. So he's another one who's dead now. And he's come in, and he's about a week after me. So, and he's with two others, Willie Corley and Stevie Corley. Either one's his brother and his cousin, or they're both his cousin, but they're two brothers, or something like that. I've never met any of these two before, but they've been given a blue tracksuit in reception. So like that's the ultimate insult. So what most people would do, if you had a bit of something about you, you'd go to your dorm, you just rob some of their grey tracksuit, because having a blue, you're wandering around. It was even that much of a humiliation that a couple of years later that some prisons, if you're on basic, you could only wear a blue tracksuit for no idea why. It was just the politics of the juveniles of the day. So Charlie Boy and his two brothers, or his two cousins, have called me over and come here and give me your tracksuit and all that. But I think I'm a big man now. So I'm like, you ain't getting it and stuff like that. And then the travellers used to have all the best like insults and threats, and they'd say things like, "I'll put your head in the wheelchair" and all that. I'll take your driver's hinges, so I will, and stuff like that. So he's saying, take your tracksuit off, as I'll put your jaw in a sling and stuff like that. So I just said, right, go in the toilets, and it was Willie Corley. So I've gone in the toilets with Willie, and we had a straight and a one-on-one. It seemed to last for ages, because usually back in them days, if someone had a fight, everyone would just rush to go and see it, and the screws would get on that something was going on. I remember there was a mate of mine called Mark Heath stood there like to keep dog and to make sure that none of the other two travellers joined in. And it was a fair fight, and we never bothered me after that. And the screws was nowhere to be seen. But a year later, 97, Willie Corley did actually come back to Werrington House, and he was huge. It's like he's been on the steroids or something like that. And you know what, he was sound though. I remember when he came back thinking, fuck, I wouldn't like to fight him now. But no, he was always sound. I went with Willie Corley again a few years later as well in Hindley, and he was always sound. But I would get my comeuppance in Hindley a few months later, just after my 16th birthday. I'm on remand, and Charlie Boy's there, and there's a couple of other travellers, John McDonough, I don't know which one, because I've met about half a dozen travellers called John McDonough, and Kelby, who became my big nemesis, because he was like, they regarded him as like the hard man of all the travellers, and I got an absolute pasting. And it was a bit like being in Werrington House, I'm thinking in a big man, but that was me being cut down to size, and I got wasted, and I got all my stuff robbed and everything like that by in the reception of Hindley. And I remember they were just humiliating me as well, like reading out my birthday cards, because I was just turned 16. And for years I was plotting revenge. And there was I mentioned in my last video, but he got off with a lucky escape when I was mates with a boxer called Graham Ayres, another one who's dead now, sadly. And we were just minutes away from absolutely pacing him. And don't get me wrong, Kelby's a handful, you know what I mean? He's not like, you know, he weren't someone who would have run off or anything like that. And I ended up with loads of nickings, and I had a couple of fights. I remember having another fight with a guy called Manny X from Wigan, and he's still doing the rounds in jail now, I think. But I got loads of warnings and nickings and stuff like that, and I was only there a month, and they shipped me out to Stoke, Heath, and there was about 5 of us all deemed all the trouble causes of the prison. It was early February, 9th of February to be exact. I remember it was Friday the 9th of February, and I only had just over 2 weeks left. I was getting out on Monday the 26th of February, but do you know those 16 days, it just absolutely dragged, because Stoke Heath was like the most boring jail. And I remember there was the people who got shipped out, it was a load of Manchester guys. It was me, a guy called Peter Dentif, Marcus Brogan, Paddy Harris, and Adam Smythe, another one who's no longer with us. And we all went to Stoke Heath. But what had happened when the 4 other people who was in the car with us, when they got sentenced, only one of them actually came to Werrington House. One of them was a girl, so she went to Style, and the other 2, because Werrington House was full, so them 2 went to Stoke Heath. So at least they had my 2 mates in Stoke Heath, but one went to Thorn Cross on the actual day I arrived. He was given a 6-month sentence, the same as me. But Adam Smythe, his co-accused, a guy called Muller, who's well known in the prison, Michael Muldoon, he was already in Stoke Heath, because the same thing happened to them. They both got sentenced, but there was only one space at Werrington House, so they tended to send whoever was the youngest. So I've ended up being padded up with Muller at the time at Stoke Heath, right up until the day I got out, with Adam Smythe next door to us. So that was but I remember when I first got there, I was padded up with a guy called Govinda Singh from Leicester, and he was absolutely nuts. He would just spend all day cleaning the cell, like scrubbing in between the tiles with an old toothbrush and everything. He just used to sing all these songs and just clean, but he was a bit of an head case, so I ended up getting moved into a cell where, you know, there was a bit of a Manchester presence. But the beef with Charlie Boy and the Travellers would continue when a mate of mine, this guy called Wayne Horrocks, met him in Thorn Cross and heard what had happened, and he's given him a slap around, and apparently he's just got him in a headlock and started humiliating him, saying, "Who's the daddy?" and all that, or some kind of words like that. But I never saw Charlie Boy again after that. And I got out from Stoke Heath on Monday, the 26th of February in 96, where the cycle of getting out and coming back in would just return, which was a familiar pattern to too many young people back then and probably still is now.